Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this daily conversation around all things to do with COVID-19. We usually cover three crises on the show: the economic crisis, the health crisis, and the racial inequality crisis. Today, we are going to be talking about another aspect of COVID-19, how social media is being used. It affects all three of those crises. We're going to be talking to a very special expert, one of the world's top analysts of digital diplomacy, and we're going to discuss his new reports on how world leaders use social media. You're going to be meeting Matthias Lufkens, who is the founder of Twiplomacy at Twiplomacy, and a social media architect at BCW Global. He is right now sharing this to all his friends and family, and I hope you are doing the same. We're live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Please share right now. Hi, everyone. I'm Sree Sreenivasan, and just absolutely delighted to have you here with me on our show. Thank you for being here. If this is your first time, welcome. If this is your 139th or 40th time, welcome as well. We are live in New York. From New York, we've been here for 140 straight days, and we plan to continue as we cover this unprecedented global crisis. We usually live at around 9 p.m. Eastern, but we're live now at noon Eastern because that's when we do shows where we have folks from Europe. And we have a terrific guest from Europe today, and that's why we are with you at this time, so early in the day for us. Noon Eastern, it's 6 p.m. in Geneva, and our guest is from Switzerland, so he's going to tell us exactly where he is. Even if you're not interested in his conversation, he has the best background of any guest we've had so far. And that's saying something because some of our guests have been rated very highly on Room Rater and other things. So you want to stay tuned just for that. You will meet him in just a couple of minutes. In the meantime, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being with us. And please share this live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Please find me on all those platforms. I'm talking to Matthias himself and making sure he's sharing on all the platforms. And you can do that too. You can see in our first 125 shows, We've had more than 1 million viewers. We've had 88 million social impressions, and we've got more than 234 guests. And we are just absolutely delighted that you could all be with us today. We are in partnership with Scroll.in, one of India's leading news analysis and information and cultural websites. Please check them out, Scroll.in. And we want to thank our producers, Rose Horowitz, she's at Rose Horowitz 31, and at Vandana_Menon on Twitter. They're both terrific, and they've been with me for all these days. All right, just before we get started, we have to thank our sponsors, and we start by thanking Muckrack Academy for fundamentals of social media for journalists, PR pros, and everyone. A free certification now available. mrac.co/social. More than 4,000 people have signed up for this, and you will learn a lot as I did in putting this together. mrac.co/social. Please check it out. We also want to thank our new sponsors at Nunbelievable. 20% off with the code SREE. Divinely delicious cookies on a mission. Each box of handcrafted cookies provides 2 meals to those in need. So please take a look at nunbelievable.com, 20% off with the code SREE. And we also want to thank our friends at She's on Call, a brand new show that covers all aspects of the healthcare crisis. And we had a special episode this Sunday that you can go back and watch about going back to school. Dr. Heather Klaus was a guest, a specialist in infectious diseases. Dr. Sally Goza, the president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And Donna Mazik, registered nurse, executive director of the National Association of School Nurses. Our hosts are two two surgeons, Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and Dr. Marina Kurian. So with that, let's get started. Everyone ready for our amazing guest today? He is backstage and ready to join us. He is Matthias Lufkins, the founder of Twiplomacy. You can hear he's outside, so it's going to be really special as you hear him. And he joins us. He's the founder of Twiplomacy, social media architect at BCW Global. And here he is. Hi, Matthias. How are you?
Hi, Sree. Thanks so much for having me. You took me a little bit off guard. I'm actually in central Switzerland, in front of one of the most iconic Swiss mountains, the Eiger mountain here in Grindelwald. And I'm actually outside. This is not a fake background. This is, a real mountain. It's very quiet. This is the best place to do social distancing, I have to admit. I just came back from a 15K walk here, which is absolutely amazing. So excuse my attire, but happy to answer all your questions about, how COVID-19 has affected diplomacy and digital diplomacy.
Yes, thank you. And I wanted to tell you, I normally would have changed my shirt, but when I saw what you were wearing, I said I have to match you, and so that's what I did. I stayed on my T-shirt so that I could match you, but I can't match your background. What a wonderful background! In a few minutes, maybe later, I'll ask you to give us a tour of where you are so that people can see that. And we're just delighted that you're with us. My first question always is, how are you? How is your family dealing with this crisis?
Look, we do live in France, so we were really locked down in France, 1 kilometer around the house. However, being very close to Lake Geneva, we had lake view. We weren't confined in an apartment, but a house with a garden. So the children, the family, we're all safe, we're all healthy, wearing masks, washing our hands, really making sure that we don't spread the virus, or we're not being infected. I think that is very important. So knock on wood, it's going well. I'm home officing, working from home, but have been going back to the office for the past week in Switzerland, and including public transport, where of course everyone has to wear a mask. So we'll have to live with it, I think, for a long, very, very long time. I don't think it will ever come back to normal as we've seen back in 2019 or in the beginning of this year.
And that is so sad to think about. We met through the process of being in the old days where we all had meetings and events, and you were kind enough to attend a workshop I did, and we had a fabulous lunch afterward. Tell me, how does a city like Geneva recover when its heartbeat is meetings and connections and seeing people in person? How do they get through this? How does international meetings, all that part of the work, how do they all recover?
Well, I think it was a big shock, first of all, to be thrown into digital, into Zoom meetings, into Google Hangouts, etc. So I think this is quite a very steep learning curve for many diplomats, that, yes, you can just go live on your mobile device or on your laptop, and but then how do you interact? Many of them, you've probably seen this with your guests, many of them stare at the screen, look at themselves, rather than looking at the camera when they're speaking. And the same also when they're working from a laptop. Most of them are looking down from above, they're looking down on their audience. So those were the teething problems. But I think now everybody is kind of used to, the procedures of digital calls. Who speaks first? Who speaks second? You cannot just interrupt without raising your hand, and that's a click away. So I think people are learning that. Will it ever get back to normal? I don't think so. The UN General Assembly, which is scheduled to be happening in September, at the end of September, in the big UN Assembly Hall, there will only be one representative per country, where normally you have 5, 6, 10 people huddling around. So it will be a very low-key in-person affair, but a very big digital event, because every single leader has been invited to send his or her 15-minute video. And I find this quite interesting. What do you say in 15 minutes? Normally these speeches, they've been going on for the whole week. But what can you do on social media or digital? How can you make this really interesting and riveting so, A, that people will watch you and listen to you, and also that they will share your video? I think one tip is, don't make it 15 minutes. So, but, that's the new reality. There is, this hybrid model of in-person meetings with, the digital component. But the digital component is just the new normal. For a client, I have to do a workshop in September with people in London, Frankfurt, Milan, Zurich, and Geneva. That's the new normal. Nothing, that's the way we have to deal with it. Okay, we will miss the lunch afterwards. Those personal interactions that you have after the meetings. But I am convinced we can actually get much more work done. And that's what I hear from lots and lots of people. We're much more focused in digital meetings, in video conferences.
I think the key is they shouldn't be too long, right? When they're too long, it becomes a problem for everybody. So we have to adjust. So what is your tip? You said don't send 15-minute videos. How long should the videos be that the digital leader or the leader send in? How long should they be?
Well, I've been thinking about that. Just think about it. Let me ask you a question. Which is the key UN speech that you remember?
Oh, there were obviously the ones that are, well, the most famous one is the one by Khrushchev, right?
Exactly. So as people of a certain age, like you and me, we probably remember Khrushchev, although I tried to find a video of it. I don't think there is any. But then you have Khrushchev, the Cuban leader, Fidel Castro, spoke for hours. And the latest one was a couple of years ago, Benjamin Netanyahu, because he had a prop. He did show, the how close Iran was getting to having nuclear material. So basically, this year, every one of these leaders has a chance to do what I would call a Queen's speech. Something that sums up the year, that outlines your plan for the year that Queen Elizabeth has been doing for the past half century every year on Christmas. Now, how to make that. How to make that impact and that video. So it's very much a personal presentation with video, with props, with clips from other events. And I think we'll probably see a couple of world leaders do this and try this. I just remember the president of El Salvador last year, who was basically taking a selfie before beginning his speech at the UN, claiming, rightly so, that his selfie would get a bigger audience than his speech at the UN. So I think it should be short and shareable. And if I say short and shareable, then you'd have to go probably, a minute, because that's the most you can do on Instagram, unless you go to Instagram stories, so you can do a bit more. But, it's basically 140 seconds, 2 minutes 20 on Twitter.
Well, thank you so much. I want everybody to share this right now with your friends and family. I know Matthias has already shared it on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. We're live on all the platforms, and we are talking about Twitter diplomacy and trying to understand how world leaders use this. So I thought I would share with everyone the time we met and this tweet that I did. It was almost 2 years, just a little over 2 years ago, June 30th. It's now July 30th. And so 2 years and 1 month ago, I said, this man DMs with more presidents, prime ministers, and foreign ministers than anyone in the world. Meet at Lufkins, creator of at Diplomacy and expert on digital diplomacy, social media architect at BNM, founder of In Your Pocket. So this was all 2 years ago. So you'll give us an update on all the new things you're doing. But I wanted everyone to see the smiling, happy person you see now is the person I met 2 years ago. And one of the things I noticed, if you see him, he has an iPhone in his pocket, which he's using right now to come live to us, but look down on his wrist. So I was really curious about that particular watch that he had. So I said, how does Lufkins do it all? The secret, hold on, let's hear. The secret may be his watch. It's not a watch, actually. It just looks like one. It's a blank, a fake, a facsimile. The time is whatever you want it to be, he says. And what I thought was, you know how the iPhone, Apple Watch, it's blank when it's down. So I thought that's what it was, but it was a blank watch that he had. So this conveys his personality and his engagement style, which is fantastic. So let's talk a little bit. First of all, do you still have that watch? And
I do, but I'm sorry, I'm not wearing it today. I love it. I love this watch.
Yeah, so
because it's a dud. And what time is it? Well, what time do you want it to be?
So that was one of my worries, that maybe we won't be able to meet on time because you may decide it's in whatever time you want it to be. So let's talk a little bit about your updated bio. You can see here there's new things on it, lots of things on it. So walk us through your background and tell your story through your Twitter bio, and then we will also take questions. We have people watching from around the world. Please tell us where you're watching from, and also ask him questions about world leaders. Who's doing social media well? Who's doing it badly? This is your chance to talk to Matthias and to ask him those questions. So go ahead, please.
So, I put it in my Twitter bio. I'm a trained journalist. I was with the French news agency, Agence France Presse, and then I worked in the Baltic states as a correspondent for the French newspaper Libération and the UK Daily Telegraph. Then I went to Euronews Television, which is based in Lyon, and from there I went over to the other side and started to work for the World Economic Forum to do media relations, basically, and I put the World Economic Forum on social media back in 2006, starting with YouTube, and then Twitter in 2007 and Facebook. Really proud of how the forum has evolved on social media, has become a mastodon, one of the best international organizations to follow. Actually, I wonder if it's still an international organization, or just basically a global news organizations. I mean, the New York Times, they will kill me if I say this, but I think the way the World Economic Forum as an international organization has embraced digital media is really, really cutting edge. So I left them in 2012 to go to Burson Marsteller, which is now BCW, Burson Cohn and Wolf, APR agency, and I'm helping clients manage digital and the digital world from traditional media, but mainly digital and digital media relations. For me, as Sree pointed out, being able to direct message journalists or world leaders on Twitter without spamming, I think this is really important. Is something that I find is very, very useful. Making these connections, and social media allows us to make these connections, be it on Twitter, on Instagram, or on TikTok. There are all these different channels, and we can talk to anyone who's out there. And this is what we do at Diplomacy. We're really kind of well connected with world leaders, have created DM groups and private Facebook groups, and also private LinkedIn groups. So it's just a great way to connect, and not simply just to broadcast. Obviously, these channels are all to broadcast, you share your tweets and your videos, but it's really kind of making these connections, which I find very, very interesting. And Sree is one of the best persons to make connections. If you ever see him live, go and see him live. His workshops are absolutely amazing. So over to you, Sree. Do you have any questions? I see there are a couple of them in the chat, I think.
Yeah. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to say hello to everybody who's watching from around the world, so that they can say hello. And I'll ask you any memories of the cities that we talk about. So first, Jonathan Borstein has watched for 140 straight days that we've been on lockdown. He's watched. Tell us your favorite memories of New York. Go ahead, Matthias, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry. My favorite memories of New York.
Yes.
Oh, I think it was 4:00 in the morning, Washington Square. Basically, I had a great time in New York, loved it. But I haven't been there. I've only been back twice. So that was back in the 80s. I lived a year in the States. In Denver.
And you haven't been back. You don't come often. I didn't realize that.
I don't come as often as I would love to. I really don't. No, and then I remember I went to a great restaurant. I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, a Stanton Social. Does that still exist?
Yeah. Our friend Jonathan can tell us. So you have to make a trip here so we could see you. Doug says hello from the redwood trees in the San Francisco area. Thanks for doing this program. Doug is a great friend. He's been on the show multiple times, and you've been to San Francisco.
I have been to San Francisco, yes,
and
I love it.
Okay. So you'll have to read this out loud because my French is non-existent. This is our friend Stephen Kaplan.
Bonjour Mathias, Sree et tout le monde, mes meilleurs vœux. I was just greetings from Stephen Kaplan saying hello to Matthias and Sree and everyone else watching. So all the best, he says.
That's awesome. And Vandana Menon says, wow, the background is really stunning. So we will get a full view. That is the view of the Eiger, if you've just joined us.
Exactly.
Mount Eiger in Switzerland.
The problem is, the Eiger is in the cloud. So, it wasn't the best day to go walking today. but still an amazing place in Switzerland. I've never been to this place here, Grindelwald, but this is it just blew my mind. It's absolutely beautiful.
Where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm from Germany, from Krefeld near Düsseldorf, Cologne in the Rhineland. But then I left after high school. I went to France and never came back. Then I studied in France, became a journalist, and today I'm still living in France, but close to Geneva and commuting into Geneva.
That's right. I know that people who live in Geneva go shopping in France. And you can do that back and forth as well.
Yep.
So I can do the reverse also.
Yep, absolutely. Meat is so much cheaper in France, so the Swiss come over to buy meat in France.
Stefan says, now that is a background that no COVID call guest will be able to top, not even my fish tank. Some people will think it's fake, so we have to show them in a little while. We will turn
so
people can see that it is real. And Elion says, hello. And Rose Horowitz is one of our other producers. She's live tweeting at Rose Horowitz 31, and she has a wonderful movement, Matthias, that you should know about called #WomenToFollow. And she's always highlighting women in various fields. So I'm sure there'll be a good collaboration between diplomacy and Women to Follow. And Eloyin also has Diplomacia Digital RD.
Do you know Eloy? Eloy is the man behind the social media channels of the Foreign Ministry of the Dominican Republic. He's done an amazing job over the years. So he's following with the #Digital Diplomacy RD for Dominican Republic and sharing that with his friends. A great guy. Even though his boss has been, is changing, but I hope they'll keep him on.
I'm sure they will. And those of you who have been good at digital diplomacy will always have work. Linda says late, but here from Long Island. And Rao's watching from Warsaw. Have you been?
I have been to Warsaw, and I love Warsaw. Actually, is a little parenthesis. I did live in the Baltic states, and not only was I a journalist, but I created a city guide called In Your Pocket.
Yes.
And there is Vilnius in your pocket, Riga in your pocket, Tallinn in your pocket, but also Warsaw in your pocket and Krakow in your pocket. City guides which are doing, it's still going. A little bit of a problem with COVID, of course. If restaurants have to close and you don't have much travel, but they're getting back into the game. So really sharing the good tips, what to see, what to do in those cities. So that is interesting how COVID has affected travel and also city guides. But we had been already online, so they'll be back online. They are online already, so it's not only the print guides, but really online. So you can find them all on inyourpocket.com. But that was just a little bracket.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Folks, after we do this world tour of people saying hello, we're then going to get into the meat of this. We're going to go to Twiplomacy, and he's going to show us his new studies on how world leaders are using Twitter and Facebook during coronavirus. So you don't want to miss this. In fact, please share with any friends who are interested in world affairs. Please tag them. Please share it with them right now, and we'll look at that in just a couple of minutes. So by the time you tag your friends and they join us, they'll be able to see this. There's also recorded on all these platforms, so they'll be live as soon as we're done. You can watch as well. Let's see, our friend Roy's watching in Bangkok. We have another guest in California. And diplomacy is a fact of life in this online world, of course, but it's a double-edged sword more than ever, as it often feeds into the toxic environment that's already doing so much more harm to our interconnected world. Any thoughts on how to mitigate these risks?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that statement. Actually, when we started diplomacy, it was back in 2012. You had US President Barack Obama and Russian Prime Minister and then President Dmitry Medvedev sending each other, personal notes publicly on Twitter. So it was all very lovey-dovey, and so people weren't really thinking that would be a thing, digital diplomacy. Then came 2014, the invasion of Ukraine. And then I think digital diplomacy turned sour insofar as you then had, Western powers tweeting against Russia and Russia, defending it and using its embassies, to defending its point of view. Now, over the past 8 to 10 months, we have seen that Chinese diplomats have adopted Western social media platforms, namely Twitter, Facebook, and are really, really active. And basically, they've taken the leaf out of the Russian playbook, and the discourse is not very diplomatic, but it's very, very antagonistic. And you can see, in fact, the exchanges between the State Department and State Department spokesperson Morgan Ortagus and the Chinese spokesperson. So I think digital diplomacy has become really serious, a war of words, if you want, and not very diplomatic anymore, which I find very, very sad. And also the fact that for us it was really interesting to have these relations. Who follows who is one of the key aspects that I like in the study, to see who has the most mutual connections. Well, nowadays I think they're all very in silos. US President Donald Trump does not follow any foreign leader. He doesn't even follow any foreigner, but only his own, his hotels, and his family. So in a way, kind of the rise of digital diplomacy, with this promise of better understanding between social media users, hasn't really materialized. So I do have to say, how do we turn this around? I always say, let's be positive. Let's tweet positive. Don't vent your anger on Twitter, on social media. If the airline lost your luggage, don't share it on social media. Send them a direct message. They'll sort you out. So basically, just be kinder to each other.
That's great advice, and something I always recommend as well. Linda says, can you recommend specific foreign press that Americans should be reading these days?
Foreign press that Americans should be reading. Well, if you want the European or international point of view, I would strongly recommend the BBC as broadcast and radio, as well as the Guardian, or any of the top tier UK papers. Just for me, it's really difficult, to see how the media in the US has become so polarized. So really look for something outside. The Economist. Sorry, I should mention, of course, the weekly Economist. It just gives you a different point of view, a European point of view, which gives you then this outside view of your own country. I think that's always interesting. I actually do read. I'm more interested in the US media on international affairs, because, well, to get that different view.
By the way, just want to say how good the infrastructure in Switzerland is, that you are on a mountain and outdoors, and how quiet and beautiful, and the sound is perfect. So thank you for that. And Rick Botello says, how can we use diplomacy more effectively to usurp the Twitter king? What are your best tips and strategies? I guess he's talking about Donald Trump. So without getting political about it, what do you suggest?
Well, listen, in our studies, we always have the ranking. Who has the most followed? Who is the most active? And but what I really, think is the most interesting, who has the most connections. So we all know Donald Trump has the most followers on Twitter, on Facebook. It is the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But what we really want to look at is how are they interacting with their audience? How well does do their posts perform? So how many interactions do they get? I have to admit, Donald Trump is doing very, very well. He has an army of supporters who really like and share his posts like no other leader. So I think that's quite interesting. What we've seen during the coronavirus, and this is maybe, it's kind of a different idea. It's not just, who has the most followers and interactions, but how do you engage your audience? I found the Danish and Belgian foreign ministries really interesting because they've created groups on Facebook for their citizens stranded abroad so they could help each other. Basically, in both foreign ministries, the crisis center both were overwhelmed by the number of their citizens who wanted to travel back to their countries. So they've basically created a Facebook groups. One is curated, the other isn't, where Danes and Belgians could share tips if they were stranded somewhere in the world. So I think this is one of the examples that I wanted to highlight from what we learned, how COVID has changed the way foreign ministries work, because they really could use that. People on the ground would connect with them through social media, and they opened up on social media, creating those groups. So if you're not familiar, you have a page, you can create a group. The group has much more interoperability. It gives more people a voice and really connecting with them. And to have that created those groups, I think those are two great examples to engage and to help, in this case, obviously, your audience. There's two other world leaders who have groups for their election campaigns. That's Benjamin Netanyahu, who has a group of his friends and ambassadors, if you want, his supporters, and the Prime Minister of Jamaica, and that is used then more for political campaigning purposes. But I wanted to highlight those are a couple of examples I like to show, which I find quite interesting. And then in terms of connections, it's actually the Norwegian Foreign Ministry which is currently the best connected, if you want, having the most mutual connections on Twitter with other world leaders and foreign ministries, 147. In second positions, you have the Foreign Office, the Russian Foreign Ministry, and Israel, if I remember well. Basically, the key is here, how can you make connections so that you can then communicate privately on the platform here, in this case, on Twitter. We don't know how much private chatter is going on, but I tell you, when diplomacy sends direct messages to world leaders, many of them reply. Some of them don't, but those who follow us in general do reply.
One of the things that you may remember from my workshop that we did in Geneva at the Grand Palace, which was amazing, at the UN headquarters, was we said that what's common sense in real life is common sense in social media, and who you are isn't changed by social. Social just amplifies who you are. And the thing that we saw, for example, you said Donald Trump doesn't follow anybody, is only connected to his companies, doesn't follow foreigners. All of them is who he is in real life, right? He's, at least, give him credit, he's not pretending to be otherwise. This is what, when anybody says something about Donald Trump, I always say, he's told you what he's going to do, and he did it. May have been worse than you thought, but he told you. So and Norway, on the other hand, as you know, is very much a very active diplomatic country. They do a lot of foreign aid. They participate in the world. So I'm not surprised to hear they're one of the best connected, because that's who Norway is in real life. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, it's simplification, but you're hitting the nail on the head. It's and then the other thing is we're looking at heads of state and governments, but there are so many diplomats, ambassadors who embrace digital media now, and at their level, they don't have millions or hundreds, thousands of followers. They have a couple of thousand followers. It doesn't matter. They're making an impact. They're really using social media to engage, to help their citizens, or to communicate with new audiences, to listen, and I think this is all now part of diplomacy. It's basically use those tools because the people are using them. So you need to have your ear on the ground if you're an ambassador, if you're a diplomat, and most diplomats will do this. And not necessarily to have millions of followers. That is good for Donald Trump. Anyway, he uses his account more as a campaign account, really, than a presidential account. And the POTUS account, which was created to be the official account of the position, unfortunately, just simply retweets his tweets, which is a bit sad. So, but anyway,
But there's another example. He uses his presidency as a campaign. So you may remember Al Gore got in trouble when he was vice president because he made one phone call out. There are all these rules and he didn't follow, and then the press covered it nonstop for a couple of years. And now this president is one of the ways. A good lesson for anybody who is doing crisis management is have too many crises, and then you'll be okay. The problem is most people do just one crisis at a time and they suffer. So the Donald Trump solution is to do 1,000 crises and all will be equal and nobody will pay attention. It's kind of brilliant how he uses all of these tools.
I mean, so basically, we have to find these leaders who are different, who are engaging. And I'll give you one. Of course, we all know her. She should actually come on your show one day. It's Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Follow her. She's not very good on Twitter, but follow her on LinkedIn and especially on Facebook, because she will, after they're broadcasting live her official press conference, but then in the evening, after having fed her 1-year-old, she will actually whip out her mobile device and go live and just summarize, what the government has done and what is planned for the next week. It is so refreshing to be able to listen to someone just, explaining politics, just from me to you. So if ever you can, watch some of her lives, I think she is a brilliant leader, and she has brought the country through the COVID-19 crisis with very strict measures, but always explaining how she did it. And I think she, absolutely an example to follow. I wish more leaders would, have the courage to go live, and just chat and interact with their followers. Obviously, once you have 100,000, 1 million followers, and if you have a divisive character, you do have a lot of detractors who will then also, be active on your social media accounts with criticism. But I think, people should, leaders should try this. On Twitter, they could, for example, do Twitter chats, which is a very safe way to get into this two-way conversation. The Israeli Twitter account, which is run by the Foreign Ministry, did 2 Ask Me Anything sessions during the COVID lockdown, deciding, we're bored, you're bored, why don't you just ask us some question? And those sessions were absolutely interesting and fun to watch.
But did they evolve into Israel-Palestine stuff also?
Yes, they did. They answered in a really interesting, cheeky way. Somebody says, "Why can't you get along with Palestinians?" To which these social media manager replied, "Why can't Palestinians get along with Israelis?" So, it's very, very hard to discuss this in a Twitter chat, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But the fact just to share other cultural items, such as recipes of, cuisine recipes and so on, talking about other things, I think it just shows there is a human behind the official Twitter account. And, just engaging, I think, will go a long way to solve stereotypes and to get rid of stereotypes.
You're so right. We have about 15 minutes left with Matthias, so we want as many questions to come in as possible. We also want to say you've given us a great assignment to get the Prime Minister of New Zealand on this show. Maybe for our 150th show, we will try, our 200th show. She is also an example of someone who is good in real life and is great on social, because she has led her country through the crisis, and not just this crisis. You remember the shootings crisis.
Absolutely.
She is who she is in life, and on social media, and has done a really good job with that. So let's just look at a couple more comments, and then we'll go into the two studies so that we can look at that. Jonathan says The Guardian is very good and also fond of the Globe and Mail from Canada. And it says here, I like Stanton Social too, but it closed in 2018. It is as a sister restaurant called Randall. And Ashok has invited you to Kerala. Have you been to India?
I have not been to India. I'm dying to go. Unfortunately, it hasn't materialized yet, but that is my next destination.
Great. Vandana says Modi is the most followed Instagram world leader.
Absolutely.
And Quizplomacy was one of my main sources for a grad paper I wrote on populist leaders and social media, and she's now one of my producers. So what a small world.
Oh, well, great. Well, it's really interesting how many students follow Diplomacy, and how I do see citations in scholarly works. I'm really honored. Seriously, I'm really honored to find the mention of Diplomacy. We've almost been going for a decade now. I started in 2012. I had a couple of blog posts before that talking about digital diplomacy between leaders and who talks to each other and who follows each other. But now we have over 1,000 Twitter accounts that we're following of world leaders, of heads of state and government, but also foreign ministers. I mean, if you want to have a voice at the table nowadays, you better be on social media, and then choose your channel. If you think, I think for digital diplomacy, Twitter is still the key channel. If you like visual, if you want to reach a younger audience, Instagram. There's great Instagram feed of the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and it doesn't show handshake pictures. Obviously now during COVID, no more handshakes at all. But even before, so very different perspectives of her work, which I really like. The Instagram channel also of the French president, which is run by his official photographer, and she's an absolutely amazing photographer. So it's really kind of the visual aspect. And then if you want to target a younger audience, TikTok. I think world leaders have the chance now to explore TikTok. Emmanuel Macron did. Why? Because he wants to, reach Generation Z and the millennials, because in 2 years' time he is up for re-election. So same for the Polish president. He just won the elections. He has a TikTok channel, and the other president is the president of Venezuela. So only 3 world leaders so far engaging on TikTok. It's not about is China, is it safe? I think it's a platform where there is a significant audience, and I think think about how you can reach that audience. And the actually during COVID-19, it's the health ministries which have started using this platform to reach millennials and Generation Z, to really show them these are the things you have to do. Wash your hands, in order not to transmit the virus. And I think it's very, very smart to use these emerging social media channels.
Great. I just want to show you the front page of the Wall Street Journal today. Look at this headline. First of all, that it's above the fold in the middle of everything going on. Instagram offers cash to lure TikTok stars to rival service. So that's how big this news is. And it's the #1 item on the Wall Street Journal, what is news for business. So that tells you something. The battle for attention, the battle for minds of young people is huge. Linda asks, are you aware of New York Governor Cuomo? How do you rate his leadership through COVID? If you don't, no worries. If you don't,
look, I've seen a couple of his press conferences, but because it really concerns New York, and not necessarily where I was.
No problem.
The French ones.
Here is, I'm curious if you have a view of Rahul Gandhi's use of social media. He's the opposition leader, the son of the former prime minister, grandson of another prime minister. I've noticed that instead of preaching to the masses, he's now imitating Sree by interviewing people in his conversation with series, such as China and how nurses around the world are handling the COVID crisis. I suppose it's a way to get around fake news and to tell the story of the people he wants to hear from. So
Yeah.
generally, even if you're not familiar with him, what do you think about going live? You already said going live is really helpful.
Going live is really what you need to do nowadays, and not only talking about yourself, but really having this conversation. I mean, what you're doing, you've created an amazing platform. I'm very honored to be the 114th guest on your show. This is leadership. This is sharing experiences and interesting point of views. I love this, and I think this could be the same, for leaders. So Jacinda Ardern, unfortunately, she's one of the very, very few who will go live. I wish more would do that. More would have the courage to address that. Obviously, how do you moderate? If you have all this negativity, how do you get around that? But it's having that conversation, this two-way conversation. I think it is absolutely vital. And I'm sure when, in future, we will see more leaders, engaging directly. And it's a question of getting used to it. Others don't really like to speak, to look into a little camera on a mobile device, So it's not easy for everyone.
No, it's not. So we have very little time left. So we're going to do quick questions and quick answers. What is your opinion of how the UN Secretary General and other UN leaders are using social media?
Well, to different degrees. I love Dr. Tedros, the head of the WHO, who has become the most followed leader of an international organization, obviously through COVID-19, but also because he does it himself. He has, tweeted a couple of his team prepares, some of his tweets, but some of his tweets are really his personal tweets, especially these one-word tweets where he had compassion, courage. It's just one-word tweets during the period of lockdown, which I found really interesting. I wish Antonio Guterres would be a bit more personal and open up a little bit more. I find it a bit too traditional and official, but that's it still works. He has quite a number of followers on Twitter and on Instagram.
Very good. Stefan says, Matthias, I just followed you on Twitter and Instagram. You must post a shot of that stunning background you are at present. And what do you think? What do you think about Twitter trying to label Trump's tweets as untrue or fact checking? Or is that a good idea?
I think it's a good idea, but they have a lot of work that they have to do. Because you start with Trump, and where do you stop? If you have to fact check everyone. Basically, you remember the two tweets which were fact-checked for inciting violence. His social media manager, Dan Scavino, posted them as a picture afterwards. That is still up, that tweet. So obviously, there's a difference between the social media manager and the account of Donald Trump. So I think they have a lot of work if they have to fact-check every tweet. And talking about that background, whenever I post travel pictures, nobody likes them on my Twitter account. It just doesn't interest my audience. So
I know it will be huge, right? Instagram.
I post them on Instagram or Instagram stories, saying I was here. But and now I started, just to play around a little bit with TikTok. But yeah.
Yeah. Here's Jonathan says, to be diplomatic, great show. Thank you. And Rajni says, greetings from Toronto. Have you been?
I have, but a long, long time ago, back in 1981. It's a long time ago.
That is a long time ago. So let's go into your diplomacy study and talk about it. I'm going to pull this up on screen so everybody can see, and just talk me through what is the study. So you have two studies we're going to talk about. One is world leaders on Facebook and diplomacy. So let's start here. And
basically, yeah. Diplomacy is basically looking at how do world leaders use Twitter and year on year. And we basically have the rankings at the very end. You don't need to scroll down. It's really difficult to read. But obviously this year, what is most interesting is how did world leaders tweet about coronavirus? Because it became the most tweeted hashtag starting in March when all world leaders, governments focused on that. And it's basically a timeline on how they have used social media and Twitter here to warn about infection of the virus, but also to encourage the healthcare workers with, using emojis, going out and on the balcony and clapping, and even the Prime Minister, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he clapped, and his clapping was quite interesting because he had just been discharged from hospital, having been a victim of having been affected with COVID-19. A handful of world leaders have been diagnosed with COVID-19. Most of them, all of them, have survived. And then, how have they shown leadership wearing masks? Very early on, the president of El Salvador changed his profile picture. Even the First Lady, Melania Trump, wore a mask while her husband, Donald Trump, refused to be photographed with one until only in the middle of July when he visited Walter Reed. So this is kind of interesting.
And by the way, that was, as you know, a contrived visit so they could have an excuse to have him wear a mask. It wasn't something natural, and that tells you something. And even now, he's posting, retweeting people saying masks don't work. So we have to acknowledge that.
But really interesting, in Africa, African leader, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, really kind of showing the example how to wear a mask. And he actually had a life and had some trouble putting it on, but he took it in stride the next day, saying, "Look, guys, next time I'll do a show on show you how to wear a mask." Leaders taking selfies. The entire Slovak government was sworn in wearing masks, and here's the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, Bettel, the President of Ukraine in the city in Chernihiv, basically explaining it's safe, come back, showing how to wash hands. And this is interesting. The Premier of Canada,
hey kids,
Justin Trudeau, he's a trained teacher, and he basically offered, if parents are stuck with homework at home during lockdown, why don't you ask, tweet your questions with hashtag Canada Homework Help, and he would help. Actually, it's not him. He then found that out to his ministers, to get them to help. The Prime Minister of Andorra reaching out to children and explaining in Spanish, children, we have a secret weapon against the coronavirus, and that means stay at home. So really kind of world leaders have become really personal on the platform. I like that. And even showing, how the president of Albania mows his lawn. And then if you scroll further down, of course, how did they deal with these? Oh, one great example I must not mention. This is the Foreign Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Mark Brantley. He basically started a coronavirus cooking course, and absolutely brilliant. Just to, with the hashtag men can cook too. And then if you scroll down, one of the follow-up videos was him working out because obviously he had eaten too much. Great way to be really personal. I think through social media during the lockdown, we were much closer to our leaders than ever before. The Austrian president, they're showing how to ditch the handshake and do social distancing. The same here, the first meetings. Then how do we do social distancing? The picture of the Pope there, I think, very strong. He was all alone celebrating in St. Peter's Square, albeit. So it's kind of this is what we did, kind of to look at how world leaders used Twitter and how they then used these social media to have their bilateral summits. And those were mainly video summits, staring at computer screens. Some simply in a laptop, others had huge video walls. And that's how they coordinated the G7 and the G20 summits, which all went virtual. So this is kind of the latest study, which just released last week. A couple of weeks ago, we looked specifically at Facebook. And as I said, Facebook was quite interesting because the number of followers for world leaders really shot up as citizens were looking for guidance from our leaders. And where do you find it? Well, you find it now on social media. So this is I think what's really interesting. So how do you engage? How do you educate your citizens? How do you reply to them on your pages? I think this is very, very important, to bring them through this crisis and to show them there is hope while addressing the issue. So every year we kind of update the study, and there is always something new to it. It's not just the number number of followers, which is interesting. But how do they use these platforms to engage? And as I gave the example of the foreign minister of Denmark and Belgium, who created groups to give their citizens more of a voice and to help themselves, which I found great. So, a couple of blog posts. One that this should be interesting to you. Twitter has deleted a couple of prime handles, such as which were registered years ago, but which are no longer being used. At EU, for example, is available, so the EU could take this account. At UK is available, but also at New York, the city of New York or the state of New York. I don't know who wants it. Somebody should definitely get it, take it, and make it live. Make a really interesting New York Twitter account that everybody can follow and engage with. And there's quite a number of international capitals which are kind of dormant. I wonder why Twitter doesn't really kind of engage and ask people or just give release these handles to people who would really bring them make them shine. There's, for example, Deutschland, the country, a country account. Who should get it? The government or the Olympic team, for example? So these are obvious, questions that you have to ask. Who will then manage these accounts? Because it is work. Let's never forget. And it's often work 24/7. And hopefully, you're not the only social media manager on the account, but then you can, every now and then give over in a different time zone to somebody else. If you do 24/7 or just sharing the load, because I think that's what we often forget. Social media is a lot of work. I don't expect world leaders to tweet themselves. I wish they would, and Donald Trump does it. I hadn't planned it this way, but I do wish leaders would dip into the social media streams a little bit more often personally, but not as much as Donald Trump.
Exactly. Sudha says, very nice presentation of world leaders setting examples for others to deal with COVID-19. Very, very nicely put. We should point out that Sweden does some interesting things, including giving a Swedish citizen access to the account every week or something like that. I cannot imagine many countries could do that or should do that.
So Sweden, this was great. They started in 2010. At Sweden, every week another Swede would run the account. They've stopped this 2 years ago, three. Oh, they've decided that's it. So the account at Sweden is dormant. So, there's at New Zealand. They've tried that. Then there's other account at Australia's run, and at Spain is run by the national tourism officers. At Argentina is the national football team. Very smart. They have lots of followers. At Great Britain is part of a Britain is Great campaign. So there's different ways you can use it. I would encourage you to follow at Swiss, which is Switzerland. They might get at Switzerland soon. At Ukraine, at Russia, because it's political and it's quite interesting, run by the respective foreign ministries. So check it out.
What do you feel about Twitter's verified accounts restarting that program?
Twitter does verify accounts.
No, but as you know, they've stopped it for most people. They're doing medical verification for doctors and candidates. The general general verification has been stopped, I believe. Yeah.
Well, it depends. I think they want, Twitter has they need to surface relevant and important voices. So I think that's what the verification should do, and they should, also divide. Do I need to be verified? No, I don't know. I got it one day, but I don't think I do need to be verified. The diplomacy account is verified in English, but not the Spanish or the French or Italian versions. But it doesn't matter. For me, it's really kind of it's important to surface those authoritative voices, and that's what Twitter is trying to do. Through COVID, they have done an amazing job of verification of doctors, of hospitals, of WHO staff. So that's really good. And also, what's really good is right now in Twitter lists, public Twitter lists. I've seen on the diplomacy account we have something like 60 public Twitter lists Some of them have tens of thousands of subscribers. I have more subscribers on the Twitter list than we have on followers. But now the onus is on me to make sure that these Twitter lists are always correct. Whenever a world leader resigns or is changed, that these lists are absolutely correct. Because we have Arab leaders, African, sub-Saharan African leaders, and so on and so on. So making sure that those lists are correct is quite a lot of work. So, but Twitter list is great to really find interesting tweets, interesting stories. So I think Twitter is doing as much as they can. Can they do more? Probably, but there are millions and billions of tweets being sent every day. How are you going to control that?
Yeah, just a couple of quick thoughts. Stefan says social media is work. So many who are not in social media think it's easy. I work in social media and always try to make it shine. Marie France says, stumbled on your talk out of curiosity and have remained glued for the past hour. Thank you for all. Isn't that beautiful? I think that's absolutely special. Linda says, need to sign off. This is an extremely interesting. Thank you. And those are,
thanks, Linda.
If you've tuned in today, we are live every single day. Not all our guests are as good as Matthias. This is the best show we have ever done, obviously. But and we will.
I don't believe you.
But please just check us out. Please connect with me on Twitter. Please connect with Matthias on his Twitter account, as you can see, and please follow @Twiplomacy. So one question: how does Twiplomacy pay for itself? You have clients who work with you. Can a world leader hire Twiplomacy to learn how to do this better?
I would love to give a private course. I've done some work, some paid work, going beyond what we've done publicly for some institutional clients, but it's mainly really a public resource, but happy to help anyone, any foreign ministry or any leader who wants a crash course or more deep dive on how to stand out and how to make an impact and how to change the world through social media. But it's we really see it as for BCW as a thought leadership tool, to inspire not only governments and international organizations, but also corporations, because I think companies should really have this mindset. They can learn quite a bit from the communications, mainly of foreign ministries, which is totally decentralized with hundreds of embassies around the world, and all of them on social media. How do you streamline that? It is almost impossible to control. So I think this is quite interesting what corporations could learn from governments and foreign ministries.
I just want to show you before I go that we working with Muckrack, and in that Muckrack Academy, we created this wonderful Buzzin' Dozen, the most accurate list of social media platforms in the world. And this is June. In July, we updated it, moved TikTok down, because as you know, TikTok lost 120 million followers in India. And that became a big crisis for them. And today on the Hill, there's a lot of worry that they could ban TikTok in America because of the Chinese-U.S. tensions. And the CEO of the U.S. TikTok has written a blog post or an op-ed criticizing these other companies, including Facebook, for what is happening here. But we have to let you go and enjoy your mountains. Can you just show us?
I will just
and
show you.
And you must come back, guys. You must come back to come. And when we do another report, you must join us again, please.
I will definitely do. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so tell us where we are. Tell us where we are. What are we looking at?
Sign off with this view. We're above Grindelwald, which is in central Switzerland, in the Bernese Oberland. And here you have the Eiger mountain in the clouds. The Eiger peak is part of a 3-peak triumvirate. It's Eiger, Mönch, and Jungfrau, probably the most iconic Swiss mountains, for Swiss citizens more iconic than the Matterhorn. And then here the view of Grindelwald, not the best here, but very, very quiet here, where I on this my
Can we see a little bit more of the mountain? Can you just show us?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Beautiful. Look at that.
Can you see that?
Fantastic. Yeah. Well,
There's the Grindelwald Glacier. They're receding, unfortunately, on your left.
Yes.
You see it. So yes, this is not, this is in real life. We're outside. Luckily, the helicopter didn't come through here before they did.
So we're so jealous of, we have seen the failure of leadership in America. That's why we're still locked down. That's why we're still leading the world. As you know, America has a quarter of the world's COVID deaths, even though we only have 5% of the world's population. That is a failure of leadership, technology, media, systems, etc., and communications. And you showed us today the value of global, clear, accurate, scientific communications. I'm so grateful to you, Matthias. I look forward to seeing you either in Switzerland or back in New York when you come back.
Look, I hope we can. Hope we can host you here in Switzerland and Europe soon, and hope that we're getting out of this situation. But also the Swiss, by the way, Swiss leadership has been absolutely amazing on social media. The Minister of Interior has done an amazing job here. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Is that awesome? That is Matthias Lufkins. He did a fantastic job with us today. Please find him on Twitter. Please follow him. Please follow Twiplomacy. There you see his Twitter handle. There you see Twiplomacy's Twitter handle. Follow him. Tweet at him. Talk to him. We're going to be live. Recorded. The recording will start right now. But take this opportunity, please, to tag a friend. Tell someone to watch and follow this show, this episode, so they can see what we have discussed. And we have some terrific episodes coming up in the next few days, including we have an episode about fighting hate during COVID with Oren Siegel, the Vice President of the Center on Extremism, with my friend and colleague Jennifer Lazarus. She'll be with us. We also have an episode with Mayor Sean Strubb, AIDS activist and mayor of Milford, Pennsylvania, and author of Body Counts, a memoir of politics, sex, AIDS, and survival, the founder of Pause magazine. And in 1990, he became the first openly HIV-positive candidate to run for federal office. And we'll be joined by Jonathan Borstein, who has helped put all of this together. And we will have other great shows as well. So please tune in. Please follow me at Twitter. And all my archives, 140 plus issue episodes, are available on Sree.net, on youtube.com/Sreenet, youtube.com/Sreenet. Please follow me on Twitter at Sree, and everything else is Sreenet, basically. And we want to thank our sponsors. We are running out of time. I have to go to a Zoom call. So we want to thank Muckrack Academy, Fundamentals of Social Media, free certification now available, mrac.co/social. We want to thank our friends at hotstar.com/US, big world premiere movies that are streaming live or streaming with English subtitles. Check out hotstar.com/US. We also want to thank Nunbelievable, divinely delicious cookies on a mission, 20% off with the code SREE, SREE. Please check out nunbelievable.com, 20% off with the code SREE. We're very grateful to all of you for being here, for supporting us, supporting our shows like She's on Call. Sunday, July 26th was the episode you're seeing here, but you can find all their archives on She's on Call on Facebook and Twitter. Remember, my job is not to do this show. My job is as a professor at Stony Brook School of Journalism, the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation, and I'm the co-founder of Digimentors, a social, digital, and virtual events consulting company. Our policy: don't cancel your event without talking to us. Don't turn it virtual without talking to us. We work with companies that are doing projects for 50 people and 100,000 people. So we can help you. I'm sure your conferences, your events fall between those two. So please get in touch, Sree@Sree.net. With that, we want to say thank you to everybody. We usually end the show by my saying their names, but we won't have time today because I'm running between projects, but we will do this again on our next show. So please tune in for that. And thank you very much, everybody. Always looking for your ideas, theme suggestions, guest ideas, self-nominations, welcome, as well as sponsorship ideas, collaboration ideas. Let us know, please. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.